Hello and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to a Premier League presentation bringing you guys a game between Virtus.Pro and Absolute Legends. This is Game 2 of this best-of-3 series. We saw in the last game Virtus.Pro taking a very easy and convincing win, really just being uncontested on that bottom lane, got an easy mechanism on the Darkseer, and from there we're able to push for the win. So we'll see if the Absolute Legends can put up a fight here in this Game 2, but it was very, very one-sided, and I really hope for a more competitive game going on into it. But I am Blaze, this is Rainmaker. How's it going, man?
Oh, it's going really good. I'm still pumped after that last game. I love aggressive Dota, and Virtus.Pro put on a clinic just showing, how much damage you can do at level 1. And also, I was really excited to see that Venomancer pick. I feel that recently we've seen a kind of resurgence of these traditional lane supports. I'm talking, there's been a lot of Crystal Maiden picks. That was a Venomancer pick. Soon, maybe I'll get to see Venge again. It's been so long since I've seen a Vengeful Spirit, and I feel those heroes add a lot to the lane because it's a dedicated nuke stun at level 1. They don't scale as well, but they have a lot of utility even into the late game, and their presence in the Dota 2 scene, I feel, is sorely missed. I really hope this is just a trend that we're going to see more and more in the future.
Yeah, so a lot of aggression coming out from the very first bit. Now we do see this time Virtus.Pro has both Radiant and First Pick available. They're definitely not going to be banning out the Wisp here, want to force Absolute Legends to ban that if they don't want it on the board, but instead going to take off the Undying. So Keeper Light and Bat Rider pretty common there. There's only a few that don't want to take those out and want to leave them in the pool intentionally, but for these two teams, they're going to make sure that those are off the board. And with Nixus hasn't come out, Guardian Wisp calling it 100%, NS picking that up right here, and oh my gosh, can set them up for one of their most powerful lineups here, using that Wisp to its greatest effect. So I'm excited about this. Yeah,
I mean, NS's Wisp is god tier. Like that hero, he knows that hero's in and outs, and he can just put on the sickest plays. But I'm curious to see Absolute Legends. They gave that away. They knew that Virtus.Pro was going to get Wisp, and I feel that every team right now has to have a strategy in order to counter Wisp. So I'm curious to see what Absolute Legends has in store, because when you're on Dire, you're going to probably, lose some experience. You might lose experience as mid pulls. You have to deal with a Wisp, so you can't allow them to push too aggressively. How are you going to deal with this? And this is kind of a struggle that every team is facing right now, and every team needs to have a solution.
Yeah. I mean, there are some different ways to deal with it here. A lot of counter global teams can be very effective. If you have a Prophet come in to counter gank every time that relocate comes on through, the signal kind of gives you time to prepare for that. But beyond that, a Disruptor is actually a pretty common pickup with the Glimpse to send back one of the two individuals that are playing so aggressively there and make them think twice about really committing to that ultimate usage. But either way, for the time being, Absolute Legends wants to draft up their own kind of powerhouse lineup, starting off with the Darkseer for some AoE initiation. Technically, they have the Magnus on the board. They could draft up what just completely annihilated them and see if that'll work out for them more effectively, but we'll have to see. Of course, Darkseer has plenty of different options, but in general we're going to see him used in a solo lane, either on the long, the safe, the jungle. We've even seen him on the mid occasionally, but either way he wants to make sure he can get that solo experience to move in towards the vacuum, and coinciding with that they have a Shadow Demon picked up, so a very illusion oriented lineup with the Wall of Replica and Disruption, and from there Shadow Demon has so much potential lane control. The question is, really, is it going to help them out so much with what they're trying to do here and try to split up the lineup? It seems Gyrocopter, you can go ahead with the next pick up.
Oh yeah, for sure. One interesting thing is Virtus.Pro, I believe they have run Wisp and Bane kind of as roaming supports. The increased move speed on Bane from Wisp is actually super relevant. He starts out at 315, and increased move speed has increasing benefits the larger the gap is. The difference between being at 315 versus a 300 hero and being at like 323, it scales almost logarithmically. You're just able to get in at more and more auto attacks, and you're always going to be in range for the spells. Also, another interesting thing about Bane, you were talking about how Absolute Legends has an illusion-based lineup. That means heroes like Luna, that means heroes like Anti-Mage that are very slippery, can get away, and oftentimes get BKBs. Bane is a great counter to that, so this is kind of a preemptive, counter pick. They know that, there's a Shadow Demon, there's a Darkseer. We know you kind of want to go into the late game. Those are two heroes that scale really well. So we're going to go and pick up a support that will deal with your threats as the game goes along. Really great picking coming up from Virtus.Pro.
Yeah, but Absolute Legends answering back with that Luna, I definitely can appreciate that, whether it's the helpful damage coming out of the Lunar Blessing to make sure that those right clicks really stay true, or the fact that they can kind of use the Moonglaze with the Vacuum a little bit, especially towards the late game when they're bouncing around all over the place doing tons of damage. It can just shred on through people, and they're kind of this matchup between Luna and Gyrocopter. We've seen this a lot of times. It's pretty much when the flag cannon is active, Gyrocopter is uncontested in that AoE damage potential, but in between those cooldowns, Luna is able to dish out a ton of her own own. So really it's going to come down to who's going to get the most farm, and although Unicorn is a great carry player, a great farmer, we've seen so much from Airman as well, staying on top of that. So I think the movement, whether Bane sits bottom or just kind of stays between the different lanes, either way, they're going to be able to set up a lot of really, really dedicated farm for the Gyrocopter, and from there he can do quite a bit, especially with, like, you consider the overcharge, dishing out that damage really, really quickly. There's only so much AL can do to hold up against that, and it's going to hurt them quite a bit. But in the meantime, we do see kind of a respect ban on the Clockwork. You don't see that every day, but Clockwork being taken off from Absolute Legends, as well as the Nature's Prophet and the Chaos Knight.
Yeah, I think that Clockwork is going to get more and more respect as a pick and a ban soon. We've seen, NS last game, Bulba plays an amazing Clockwork, and teams have finally realized how devastating being cogsed is. So a great hero that I'm glad to see enter the metagame, because the initiation potential and just the sheer aggression that Clockwork kind of forces you into leads to very interesting Dota. One thing to note is Virtus.Pro still banning out the Silencer. Silencer had very minimal impact last game. The global silence wasn't terribly effective, because at that point they were a bit too far behind. But Virtus.Pro realized that is a strong pick, and you do not want to play against global silence. If the game goes long enough, it's also a pretty decent damage dealer, especially in the way Miracle plays him. So it's a bit of fear there. I'm not going to say fear, because Virtus.Pro, they dealt with it admirably, but they recognize the power in the hero, and they just don't want to deal with it this game.
Yeah, so that's definitely the potential in that, especially when you move in towards level 11 and 16. That silence seems to last an eternity. I mean, it's only a few seconds, but it really makes a big difference whether you can get those big cooldowns or not, and initiate the way you intend to. So either way, it's pretty interesting there. But one thing that's interesting about the Bane and Gyrocopter together is that you can actually go for like a Nightmare into homing missile and actually use that homing missile as a reliable stun, whereas most lanes you have to have the Shadow Demon to be able to enable that with a Disrupt. So we'll see how it works out, but picking up the Rubik here adds a lot of versatility to their lineup as well, whether they want to run Rubik on the mid or as a support when they already have Bane and Wisp there. I don't know, but probably on the mid lane he's going to get some good experience and be able to get some good steals on abilities such as Eclipse or Vacuum, so that's going to be able to dish out a ton of damage as well, and I really think that's a very powerful pickup. Now they do start off a little bit more vulnerable. Bane, Wisp, and Rubik all have a pretty poor base armor to start with, and from there we are, like I said, there's already a lot of physical damage with that Lunar Blessing if, for example, Absolute Legends runs a tri-lane. So Virtus.Pro is going to have a difficult time dealing with that right-click damage, but on top of that, the Jakiro comes out. It was one support that I really thought would work very well with the previous lineup of Virtus.Pro, based on the Darkseer and the need for the lane support, but we also see something interesting.
Okay, yeah, these are really interesting. Speaking of the Jakiro, I think Jakiro is really strong as a defensive hero, and it's going to be very difficult if they decide to tri-lane with Shadow Demon and Jakiro. It's going to be very difficult to go on the Luna. Now, Warlock, I'm not sure how they're going to lane this. I think Virtus.Pro has something very interesting planned, because I do not think you can run Warlock as a 4 or a 5. That hero really wants the mid lane, because you want to get high levels in that Fatal Bonds. You want to go and also level up the heal. It's very effective as a heal. A little bit, not the best nuke in the world, but like it heals for a ton, especially if you get that level advantage early. And the Rock just going through BKB, they have two good ways to deal with BKB. Also, their teamfight lineup just got insane, because between Flak Cannon and Fatal Bonds, that's doing a ton of damage. Absolute Legends, they have a good defensive lineup now. They have a lot, Surge, they have Disruption, they have Ice Path. These are great defensive abilities. But unless it goes into that late game, they don't have that kind of punching power that you'd normally expect out of a Luna lineup.
Yeah, seeing that Wisp on the Radiant, again, I think they want to look into maybe the mid pulls, but even if they went for like a 2-2-1, who's going to be that one? They don't really have a very survivable hero. There was a kind of old school Warlock build that you could go for the heal over time and stats, just skilling that up very aggressively and trying to survive as best you can, but all in all, it's not going to be exactly what they need with so much burst coming out of AL, but the Outworld Destroyer definitely going to be running on the mid lane by Miracle here, and it packs a punch, so I'm curious to see how they're going to make that work out for them.
Yeah, I've not seen it's Devourer now, right? Oh. So I've not seen it's OD. So I've not seen OD in quite a few games. I know that Team Liquid picked him up, and that was kind of used in conjunction with the Visage, because if you can go and give Visage infinite mana, he just becomes the most terrifying hero in the game. But in mid, it's going to completely dominate the mid lane. Like, I don't know how they're going to deal with it. And Santa's generally the long lane player for the Warlock, so I think this actually might be that build. He's also got 1 million stats, no restoratives. I have never seen that starting items. But yeah, I think that the Outworld Devourer will win the mid lane. You can just dominate pretty much anyone they put there. And if they're able to play defensively, if this goes into late game, I think Absolute Legends definitely has the upper hand. The Wisp is going to need to get a lot done with those relocate ganks to go and prevent it from getting to a stage of the game where you have both a Luna and an OD who are active, who have the items they need.
Yeah, I think this is actually going to be a long lane Warlock, in my opinion, based on the fact that I talked about that build before, maxing Shadow Word and stats aggressively. The biggest problem with Shadow Word is it's a great heal over time, but just based on the cast time and the first couple ticks and kind of being lackluster compared to a burst heal, it is actually very difficult to get past like the first 2 or 3 seconds of the Shadow Word's heal over time effect, which is pretty extended at 9 full seconds. So starting off with this much increase in strength, this is plus 8 strength by default, and then at level 2 he'll probably be jumping up to plus 10. That's a lot of HP to chew on through, and even if he only has 3 armor, it might be enough time for him to actually be able to benefit from that Shadow Word. So I'm curious to see how it'll work out. Mostly, we've like you said, we've been seeing the Warlock in the mid lane and kind of roaming on through with that, getting some very reliable experience, but this could be very effective as well.
Oh my god, it's a solo mid Wisp. We've seen some other teams do this recently, and yes, if you want to get the levels and experience on the Wisp, this is the way to do it. It's also, but I can't imagine this going well against an OD. Like, I don't know how he's going to fare, but as long as you get experience on Wisp, you don't really mind. It's kind of like picking a Pudge. You don't get it to win the lane. You get it, oh no.
Yeah, he doesn't have anything to tether to right now. The Astral Imprisonment, not enough to set up the disruption, though, so Miracle really wanted Rise to get going, but with the Imprisonment, okay, man, this is not a good day for us as far as First Bloods go, but they actually do get the Telekinesis, I guess the Nightmare to set up for the Barrage to get in range, and from there they did get the Telekinesis up to make sure that the Darkster couldn't just walk away, and one big issue of that is Miggle going for Iron Shell at level 1. Has not gotten a drop of experience, will not get a Surge anytime soon, and for that reason has to relegate himself to the jungle instead. So that is going to be him just trying to stack up and Iron Shell things down, but it will have very small lane participation at this phase, and it could enable Virtus.Pro to push a little bit more.
Oh no.
This is going to get worse and worse for us, I know it. Man, this is just an off day for that, but yeah, okay, so top lane, there was those kills setting up here, and Disruption to go into Ice Path is a very powerful combo indeed, so I'm just kind of like not take my eyes off the minimap for a second now, because I do not want to miss the next one here, but the aggression comes out, and 1 for 1, AL versus VP right here.
Yeah, I think that, if the this solo mid Wisp, I don't think that Absolute Legends planned for it. Well, they might have, but I feel that the Darkster would have just gone to jungle immediately, got in that level 2, maybe level 3 before going to bot lane if he knew he was going against a Rubik and the Nightmare, because it's just too much damage. Rocket Barrage is a huge, huge nuke at level 1.
Yeah. So now we're kind of seeing the same thing as we saw before just a little bit, is Santa's actually heading up to stack up on the Ancients. The Gyrocopter can farm that very nicely with the Flat Cannon, but both of the long laners just be feeling not very comfortable in that slaning situation, knows they don't have too much as far as utility to survive, and from there we'll just go on to make their money somewhere else. They're just going to try to get some experience before even dealing with that other lane. And yes, it does open it up for free farm on the carries, but I feel that both teams are willing to deal with that. They're confident in Unicorn, they're confident in Airman to be able to contest that right here. And from there, the only direct confrontation is actually on the mid lane, Wisp versus our Devourer.
And Wisp is winning. Wisp is beating out the OD in last hits, which that is very strange. I'm sure it will get worse and worse the more this Astral Imprisonment is leveled up, but just due to base damage, I feel that the OD should have a huge advantage in this lane.
Yeah. So,
meanwhile, Smoke Gank from Absolute Legends, they're trying to go and gank this Wisp mid.
Yeah,
they're tired of this.
They tried up at level 1 and it didn't work out for them entirely, but with a rank 2 Astral Imprisonment, and now given TMW's positioning, he's going to have the best tether to Warlock of his life if he's going to be able to survive, and it doesn't look like they're in position for that. Instead, he's going to get locked down pretty hardcore. Rubik is relatively close, but the Disruption follows, the Ice Path, there goes the tether. Beautiful escape onto NS. They're turning it around with the Telekinesis. Fadebolt to go on through as well as some damage over time, but they're just going to force them off without able to net any more kills beyond what we've already seen.
Yeah, I mean, just great play from NS.
Oh my gosh, they got the Shadow Demon pick off. Two spirits hit, long range, and rank 2 early on is going to be able to do enough, so really smooth move from them, and I did not expect them to be able to pursue like that, but you can't underestimate those spirits. They do hit pretty hard right there, and you can pop them off on a relatively short cooldown as well.
That's one of those things that, oh, is he? Okay.
He's got a couple more spirits left. If he had enough movement speed, he could have brought him down. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. That's one of those things, you don't imagine that the spirits do a lot of damage, because by the time a support Wisp gets those spirits kind of leveled up, you're fine, you can actually tank it a bit. But when a Wisp goes mid, they shatter the enemy supports.
Yeah, you have to watch out for it, pretty much similar to a Queen of Pain Scream. It's just a huge amount of damage output really early on. Of course, it falls off after the Wisp hits 7, but from there, the Rune Control, the continuous mana, Astral Imprisonment really not showing to be enough in this situation. And yeah, the Wisp is very handily winning the mid lane at this stage.
Yep. Looking at both carries, they're farming admirably, and they're sitting at the exact same CS. So no contest there, and it's basically going to come down to, how the enemy supports are going to do. Warlock is getting some levels, but sitting at level 1. Actually, he's getting some experience, but he's sitting at level 1, and he's not doing well at all. This Darkseer, however, is playing Darkseer and is able to go and clear out these huge stacks. Already level 3, and after this, might even get pretty close to level 5.
Yeah, so that's working out for him in his favor. Team W actually pinned in here. Roshan kind of coming out to play with that Spirit Aggro. Does not actually get the right clicks on him, though. Team W, probably having dealt with that situation previously, does not want to have to accidentally get bashed up and drop down to some lane creeps here. But either way, we do see continuous mid-stacking, mid-pulling coming out of NS, and that's making sure that OD doesn't have much experience to work with whatsoever. Up on top, we do see that gradually the lane is going to be pushed out. Liquid Fire not yet skilled, so it won't be able to help that much, but level 2 Warlock really not in a position to do anything about this right now. Now we do see a big TP coming on in. There's a lot of damage coming on through with that call down. Airman, though, is pretty much frozen for the time being. TMW coming in with big spirits. He actually brought just himself, but big spirit damage, giving vision onto Unicorn. They're not going to be able to follow it up without the homing missile, but they still put themselves in a great spot, and from there, it's just going to be a fallback. The Wisp is just going to head on up back to mid lane and just continue to farm. So.
Oh, that's bad. Anyway, I am now unmuted. But Airman, he's decided to go for Flat Cannon very early on, and that basically means that he's going to be able to clear these stacks and give his Warlock some experience that he desperately needs. Warlock hitting level 3 after that gank, after that successful gank attempt. And that's basically catapulting him back into the game. Once these stacks get cleared, especially this ancient stack,
oh, this is bad. Up on top, the Eclipse available, the creeps are really quickly dropping down, and now they're going to initiate on this. They put the heal over time with Santa. The call down does come on through to try to turn around, but these Eclipse doing too much damage. Unicorn's still up. They do pick up a Rise and the Jakiro, so actually turning around quite a bit, and the Flat Cannon hitting on a cross, and that's enough damage. Combining together the Fatal Bonds with the Flat Cannon is ridiculous potential damage output, and from there they were able to completely clean them up, despite I thought the Eclipse would do a little bit more than that, but only rank 1, and the Lucent Beam only rank 3, so that's a big factor there, as it wasn't the 300 damage nukes coming out from that. On bottom, we do see a hasted Wisp eventually going to get this kill on the Darkseer, I do believe. He's going to maybe try to die to neutrals, but can't really accomplish too much more than that, and the burst of the Spirit's going to finish it off as they pick up a nice little kill, and the tier 1 up top, so that's a big swing for Virtus.Pro that I didn't really see coming based on the transition of 3 down south of the Luna and his party there, but it didn't work out for them. Unicorn didn't live long enough, and the supports fell by the wayside very quickly.
Yeah, if you look at that, the Fatal Bonds was able to land before the cooldown, and the cooldown already does enough damage to these supports, and with Fatal Bonds, it's just a little bit too much. One interesting thing about that long lane Warlock, is that in the early game, you really only need a 3 or 4 person Fatal Bonds for it to be effective in these kind of like non-creep team fights. So he's able to do his job, and now he's hit level 5.
Now mid lane, the spirits are going to come on through. He does get a prison going to help out a little bit, but the call down does come on through. Telekinesing back in Mania, pops off the stun, but he's probably going to drop down as well. Just too much damage coming on out, and yeah, he gets bursted down. Now they're going to look at the tier 1. TMW just really setting up his kills and setting up Airman to just clean it up, no problem at all. So 5-0 and 3 for him, and they're going to be able to take the tower, like I said. So they have such control over the map for the time being, and until the Darkseer actually gets some legitimate levels into Vacuum and to the Wall of Replica, they don't really have a team fight to work with here. They're relying so much on Jakiro with that long-range stun and counter push, and it's not really accomplishing much here.
Yeah, I mean, in the mid-game, at this point, if Santa gets at level 6 and he drops a rock on either of the enemy supports, they're basically going to fall. Even Jakiro with that, nice 758 armor. Just a couple procs of those flaming hands. What is the... Flaming Fists, perhaps?
Burning
the Warlock,
like that.
Yeah, something like that. That plus damage is going to be enough to drop him down, and with Fatal Bonds, like, if there's a call down and Fatal Bonds, I don't think the enemy supports can survive, so they basically have to go and cede any hope of teamfight, and this isn't what Absolute Legends wanted. You don't pick up a Darkseer and a Jakiro and say, well, we can't teamfight. They're in a very sad position. Also, look at OD. He's had to go for a Bracer, he's had to go for Tranquil Boots. These are just to survive. You definitely want to get increased attack speed items.
Honestly,
What's up?
TMW might get a solo kill here. Like, seriously, he's invisible with these spirits active. You can't tell because of the particles, but he can just walk up next to Miracle, get a couple big hits off, and OD has to run really, really fast. So now the invis is broken. The Astral Imprisonment does come on through, and Rise is going to try to help out with this position, but worst case, he tethers to the creep, and indeed he does. The Ball of Disruption just continuing on through as TMW just tethers on away. So using that very effective escape mechanism, second time this game, and he's able to stay on top of things very nicely. So Ari has his bottle and his urn, and a magic wand for that matter. So great items to support while he's dishing out damage.
Eclipse.
Oh, Rubik did? Wow.
Yeah, stole Eclipse. That's just a little bit sloppy play from the Luna. That Eclipse was used a long time ago.
Yeah, that he didn't
out.
Lucent Beam a single time since then. That is actually really, really poor for them. That means that Unicorn pretty much just handed one of the best cooldowns available to her to the Rubik, and he's going to be able to get that off. He won't maybe survive throughout the entire thing, but he will be able to dish out quite a bit and make great use of it during the Fade Bolt and either get a solo kill or just contribute a lot to a team fight. And I wanted to talk about this a little earlier, but it's about the interaction of Fatal Bonds as it gets ranked up with AoE abilities in general. We're going to see that Fatal Bonds hit up in just one more rank onto 5 heroes. If 5 heroes are chained together with really, really good positioning and timing of using it, since it hits the nearest targets, you can actually amplify the damage to effectively double the damage output of your AoE abilities, because you can get 20% increase from the 4 other heroes. You're looking at least 180%. So that is just ridiculous when you talk about Flat Cannon, the call down. The Eclipse isn't AoE technically, it actually separates the damage coming out, but it's still a lot. Now we do see this popped out by Unicorn, but also the Golem coming out through. NS trying to get the Eclipse off by himself, but he does drop down in the end. A nice action from TMW, though, putting out a lot of damage with the Brain Sap. Miracle is definitely going to fall, and Mania is the next target of choice here with a little bit of Flat Cannon, incidental damage. Now TMW is out of here with that Relocate expiring, but it should be enough to finish off Rise here with a couple more right clicks. So that is another kill, 15-3 in favor of VP, and they are just taking as much of a lead in this game as they did in the last. And yeah, that Warlock Golem with his Flaming Fist burning down on that tower and really making it look like a Lego tower more so than anything else.
Yeah, I mean, they're doing a great job just keeping up the aggression, and they know they can do this. One other thing to note is it looks like Gyrocopter's going for that BKB. He's picked up a Mithril Hammer, and normally you'd go and see a Gyrocopter pick up the Ogre Club because it's just a little bit additional tankiness. However, in this game, he just wants to maximize the amount of burst damage he gets with that Flat Cannon because he knows he has the Warlock Golem, he has the Rubik Lift, and he has that Fatal Bonds, which amplifies everything. If he's able to burst down even faster, then that means there's going to be no time for the enemies to even contest him. The team fights will go so blisteringly fast in their favor.
Absolutely. And again, the Darkseer, although he has been pretty much solo farming down the bottom lane for quite some time, he's still, because of his early issues in the laning phase, sitting at only an experience per minute of 315. And from there, he hasn't been able to go past that level 8 benchmark, and he needs to break into level 9, level 10, and 11 to actually be able to teamfight. And we do see BKB coming out on the Gyrocopter, enabling him to just jump into the fray and have absolutely no care as to what's around him, because there's really not that much right-click damage. The Lunar Blessing right now is only at rank 2, and although OD can hit pretty hard, it's mostly based on that Arcane Orb, which will not hit on BKB targets. So from there, it's really going to set the Gyrocopter up to just jump on in and do whatever damage he wants to without too much fear for his own life, especially when you consider the Wisp healing potential through Urn and Magic Wand.
Yeah, when you look at that, speaking
Blink
of items,
Dagger
Bane has
on a Bane.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh my gosh.
Already Bane Blink Dagger, it's going to be tremendously difficult to be able to go. They're 5-manning for mid, but I don't know if they can effectively do this. Warlock does have his Golem. No, Golem is still down for another 40 seconds. I take that back. They might
so
have
relocate on in. They do pop off the Nightmare for the time being, holding them in place. The call down goes on through. Fatal Bonds on 2, and they're going to be able to dish out tons of damage. Mania's going to fall. Unicorn going to get singled out as well on the front line. No hope for him at all. He gets completely wrecked. And from there, we do see Airman still pursuing so fast with that drum phase combo, and Rise taking too much damage from the Barrage. The only rank 1 disruption is a very long cooldown, and he wasn't able to use it to escape. And now it looks like Miracle is also going to be picked off, looking for that TP, and it will be enough. Unfortunately for them, they don't have the Golem just available just yet, so he's going to be able to escape while the Darkseer farms down on bottom. But just an unsuccessful push, and AL kind of very overconfident in that 4v5 engagement.
Yeah, I think they thought that, they knew the rock was down, they thought that would be a chance, but it's just too much damage on that Gyrocopter. Already has that level 2 call down, and they just can't have it. Oh, great pickoff. I think this is a very dead Mania.
100%. Following up that Soul and Ice path after that nice Blink Nightmare from Bane, really solid pick off that there's just they don't have an answer for. And now that that blink is up on Bane, we didn't really talk that much about it, but the positioning of Bane, putting himself in trees perhaps in the middle of a fight, whatever he needs to do to actually get a full duration Fiend's Grip off, that is just going to be so very powerful for him. We saw it a lot on a Shadow Shaman solo mid, jumping in with like a very quick Hex, and now we can see that coming on through with all these disables coming from Bane. It's very powerful, and to see it on a supportive hero at prior to 14 minutes in the game, it's very painful.
Yeah, I mean, we saw these items on Magnus at this timing. This is really, really scary for Absolute Legends. They're going to have some really amazing team fights to even have a chance of coming back this game, and I don't know how they're going to be able to do that when you're going and playing against a Warlock and a Call Down, and, you know, Wisp to go and make sure that everyone's in the fight whenever you need it to happen.
Alright then, so they're going to be able to push down this 2-2 tower, and it doesn't look like Absolute Legends wants to actually directly contest this here. Bane going to pick up a little bit of money for himself, and from there, let's just look at how well VP is doing item-wise. We see the drum up on Gyrocopter with his BKB. The Blink we already talked about on Bane, but we're also seeing a Necronomicon coming out pretty soon for Santa. The Wisp will be making his way towards the Mechanism, presumably, only 200 gold off of that. And from there, the only one really hurting is NS, who is doing perfectly well actually on the courier wards. So he's been playing the number 5 role, and he's still got his Arcane Boots magic wand. So he's in a very luxurious point, as is the entire team, and that is just epitomized by looking at the goal graph and their current 12k advantage. Now the tower push does come on through tier 1, but they have the fortification, they have the Warlock's Golem Chaotic Offering, so they're going to try to do this, and they do pop it off, and there is a ton of damage. Mania going to get telekinesis up underneath the tower, drops down immediately. Now they get the steal, they get the Fiends, oh, just a burst coming out from the Bane, trying to turn it around. They actually finish it off on Unicorn as well. So Bane picking off 2 heroes right there. Smooth play from him, and from there looking for the rise, but the relocate has expired, and from there they might have to let him escape, but KSI has that Blink Dagger and may have another intention coming. No, going down on the low ground. Rise is going to see that and be able to juke on through.
Yeah, I don't understand what Absolute Legends' plan is, just barreling down mid like that. They don't have the items, they really need to contest it, and especially with Warlock Golem up, it's just not a very wise decision. If you just look at it, Luna's only on drums compared to this Gyrocopter who's, you know, finished his Helm of the Dominator, and has he gone and okay, they have not continued to stack that large cap. Oh, they're calling the GG. Yep. Yeah, I don't think this is a very early GG call at all. There's just not much they can do. They're a little bit too far behind. Just picked off by the aggression of Virtus.Pro one last time.
Yeah, so I kind of feel like Absolute Legends went into this match in general with the wrong mindset. They were, first off, with this draft in this game too, giving away Wisp. Apparently, it's not just one of those heroes that NS really loves to play. It's something that TMW can run mid with very effectively. But either way, the way Absolute Legend was playing was as if seeing one hero up on the top lane, one hero on the bottom lane on the minimap meant something. They were acting like, okay, we can push down a tower because those heroes aren't nearby. But a simple relocate can change that completely to make it at least a 4v4 engagement. And so they were jumping in positions they couldn't contest, pushing in positions that they were already way too low as far as teamfights go. And from there, it was just a kind of an easy pick apart from Virtus.Pro, using the Warlock to great effect. I mean, he was able to get experience even though he had some harsh time on the top lane at the beginning. And Absolute Legends just didn't have the pressure going out where they really needed it to be. So
yeah, one thing to note though is that they were, by the time they went for those mid pushes, it was a very desperate act, and I'm sure they knew that. But if they didn't get something going, it's better to try. It's better to try to go and make some really risky plays happen than just surrender the fact that we can't farm our jungle. We don't have any tower gold. We can't contest the Roshan if they go for it. If we don't get something done, we are 100% going to lose. So they were definitely playing for that 1% chance where, you know, Virtus.Pro just completely miscommunicates and throws a team fight in their favor. If they didn't get that, they would have lost the game in the long run, and I think that, you know, it does show some tenacity to at least try for it. So kudos to Absolute Legends for at least giving it a fair go.
Mm-hmm. And that is going to be it. That was Game 2 of this best-of-3 series, so well played to Virtus.Pro as they just completely dominate Absolute Legends here. There's really not too much question of that. Just Absolute Legends not really breaking out of the laning phase with any kind of advantage here, and really, once they started team fighting, it seemed like Virtus.Pro always had something up their sleeve, coming out with a Wisp, coming out with a Warlock, the Golems, and everything like that. It was too much for them to deal with, and even in exchanges that I thought they might have been able to come out of, like that 3v3 up on top, it was the positioning and the disable timing and focus coming out of Virtus.Pro that just shows how how skilled this team is, how raring to go they are for any type of engagement, and obviously they came out on top by far in these 2 matches here, or 2 games here. So that is going to be it, best of 3. That is going to be a 2-0 shutout in favor of Virtus.Pro, and I'm going to talk and see if I can get NS in here for a post-game interview, but that is going to be it as far as a professional cast for today, and we'd just like to thank you guys once again for tuning in to the Premier League. I'm Blaze, this is Rainmaker.
What's up, guys? GG's.